My name is Maria Stefanovic. I'm the Executive Director at the Leesburg Center for the Arts, and today I'm here on the corner of 5th and Main on Town Square for the Leesburg's first citrus label sign dedication, featuring two families, longtime citrus industry families, Knowles and Company Packing and E.B. Peters Packing. Welcome. I am super excited to be here. My name is Maria Stefanovic, and I'm the Executive Director at the Leesburg Center for the Arts. So this is a huge deal for me because I love seeing the art and the design work in every single crate label that comes across. I am partial to Leesburg, so I can't help it, but the detail and the branding, and in our world of branding and digital design, we've been doing it now for 100 years. So it's kind of cool to see that and see it as a citrus crate label. So I want to welcome you guys today for Leesburg's first citrus label sign dedication. The Lake County Historical Society, in conjunction with many historical organizations throughout the county and the Florida Citrus Hall of Fame, came together to tell the story of our booming citrus industry here in Lake County. And they wanted to tell the story through the Citrus Label Tour. I don't know if you guys realize, but at one time there were more than 50 packing houses here in Lake County. That's amazing. We were the lead in agriculture and citrus throughout the whole state of Florida. This sign that I stand in front of today is a progress marker for Leesburg. It highlights Leesburg's successes, and it's featuring two prominent packing houses here in Leesburg. One is the Knowles and Company Packing and E.B. Peter Packing. When thinking of oranges, and I can't help but reminisce growing up in Sunnyside and waking up to the sweet smell of orange blossoms, and then, yes, playing in neighboring groves because it just so happened it was alluring. But then also, like in my teens and early 20s, I would drive our family truck. We owned a trading post and fruit stand in Wildwood, and I would drive our family truck to go pick up loads of oranges, grapefruits, all sorts of things to sell at our family's fruit stand. So for me, I am fortunate to have been part of some sort of remnant and partake in that part of Leesburg history. So I'm excited here to share with Leesburg, and I don't know, to me this is just really cool, right? Because a lot of newbies moving into the area and visitors don't realize what Leesburg's all about, and they don't know the Leesburg history. So this is a great way for us to partner with the Citrus Label Tour and be able to showcase that. So without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce to you Mary Knowles, representing Knowles and Company Packing, and, next sheet, Emmett Peter, representing E.B. Peter Packing.
It seems very apropos to have a crate as my podium here. First of all, I would like to say thanks to the Florida Citrus Hall of Fame, the Lake County Historical Society, the Lake County Commissioners, the Leesburg City Commissioners, the Leesburg Partnership, John Jackson and Joni Smalley. Joni couldn't be here, I understand. She had something else come up. And then Brenda Burnett and Maria, thank you again. A couple people that I have here, I see from my family. I have my daughter Stephanie and my grandson Garen, representing the family, and my daughter-in-law Carrie. So thank you for being here. A couple of people that couldn't be here today that would like to have been here, my two brothers are out of town, or they would be here. And also I need to thank my brother for much of the history that he was able to provide for me that I didn't have. So thank you all for allowing us to share this story of the importance of the citrus industry in Lake County. Smelling the fragrance of orange blossoms for miles as we rode down the highway. Anxiously watching the temperature on those really cold nights, hoping and praying for the best. Praying for rain. I still appreciate a good thunderstorm. And, sorry. Driving through the groves with my father, his car showed it too. Smelling the orange juice as it was being processed in the juice plants. Visiting the packing house with my father, and the time when they weren't packing fruit and I got to sit in a packing crate at the very top of the conveyor belt and slide all the way down. Great. Going up in the citrus tower, reaching the top, looking out at the amazing view, miles and miles of orange trees for as far as the eye could see. These were some of my fond memories from my childhood. My name is Mary Knowles, as Maria said. These were my wonderful memories, yet I had little understanding of the importance that the citrus industry played in the lives of so many and the great impact that it had in the local economy for so many years. My grandfather was W.G. Knowles, thank you, who began the family business. Although I never met my grandfather because he died the month before I was born, he did give me my name. I grew up hearing the stories of how he, with his wife Mary, my grandmother, and their 3 sons, Tim, Hal, and my father Joe, left North Dakota and the potato business for a new start in a much warmer climate to grow citrus. When the Great Depression hit in 1929, it left them financially devastated. My grandmother, they left North Dakota with what they could fit in their Model A Ford. My grandmother quoted my grandfather many times, "Mary, we may starve to death in Florida, but we won't freeze to death in North Dakota." They moved to Leesburg in the mid-1930s and stayed initially at the Lakeview Hotel, which I believe was at the corner of Main and Palmetto Street. In November of 1937, my grandfather purchased a packing house, including the field box and storage building in Leesburg, from the Exchange Packing Company. It was located on Highway 441 next to the Minute Maid Citrale on one side and the Romac Lumber on the other side. There were several railroad spurs by the building to accommodate railroad cars to be loaded. Thus began Knowles & Company Packing House. Each of the 3 sons had an opportunity to become a minority stockholder in the company. Uncle Tim and my father Joe worked for the company. My Uncle Hal was a medical doctor, and he didn't work for the company. The bookkeeper was I.B. English, and he too had stock in the company. When my grandfather died, under the terms of the will, the company would continue to operate for the benefit of his wife Mary. It was decided that Uncle Tim would be the president of the company, my father Joe would be the vice president, and I.B. English would be the secretary. Through the years, Knowles & Company would provide jobs for those looking for part-time jobs, migrant workers, and summer jobs, as well as those who were employed for many years and some for most of their lives. During the time Knowles & Company existed, they had several hundred employees. In 1967, records showed that 56 people worked for the packing house. Even my brothers, David and Steve, worked in the Grove in their teen years. A family member described the profits as some years making money, some years losing money, and some years being fortunate enough just to break even. My grandmother, known as Mama to us, died in 1974, and soon after, Knowles & Company closed. Many local business partners also benefited from the citrus industry, such as Tweedle Oil Company, Leesburg Tire and Battery, Prescott Tractor, Foremost Fertilizer, Inlet Equipment Company, Mid-Florida Gas Company, Florida Grower Press, Atlantic Coast Line Railroad, and Leesburg Welding and Machine. During the last 9 years of Knowles & Company, 1965 to 1973, the company contracted with Golden Gem Growers to deliver fruit. The numbers range from 68,500 boxes in 1967 to 115,000 boxes in 1968. This contract promised varieties of early and mid-season oranges, Valencia oranges, tangerines, grapefruit, and temple oranges. Interestingly enough, my mother's grandfather, my great-grandfather, not quite yet, was a horticulturist with a great interest in citrus. He arrived in England in 1888 to live with his older brothers in Fruitland Park. Along with many other plants, palms, roses, and crinum lilies, he and his brothers grew. They had about 20 acres of oranges, along with their specialty, mandarins. Citrus growers are a determined bunch, enduring many difficulties, such as the significant freezes like the one in December of 1894, and the one soon after that followed in February of 1895. My great-grandfather, Louis Bosanquet, kept a record of dates that the temperature fell below 30 degrees. Reading a thermometer located on the north side of the veranda on his home near Lake Zephyr, or Zephyr Lake, he wrote, December 28, 1894, 12 degrees, fruit frozen. After the warm weather that followed and some good rain, the second devastating freeze came, with the trees now being full of sap. When the temperature plunged, the bark on the trees began to split, and some trees literally exploded. Most of the trees were killed to the ground. The economic impact and the personal loss was enormous. It would take years for those who stuck with it to recover. I'm grateful for the determination, the hard work, and the unfailing hope of those who stayed and replanted through difficulties such as the freezes. These early ones led the way for those like my grandfather, W.G. Knowles, who would come and pursue a business in the citrus industry. Knowles & Company registered 4 labels for the fresh citrus shipping with Florida Citrus Commission: Sunfish, KC Labels, 730, and Irish Castle. Sunfish was a USDA number 2 grade fruit, while all the other labels were for USDA grade number 1 fruit. We chose the Irish Castle label to represent Knowles & Company because of my grandmother's fondness for Irish Castles. The label was designed with the help of my father, Joe. This was while he was at Rollins College in the early 1940s and prior to his enlistment in the Army Air Corps during World War II. Later revisions were made when a new printing company was selected. My family members and I, especially my brother Steve, through the years have had many opportunities to meet and talk with people who would finally relay their stories of the time when they or members of their family worked for Knowles & Company. And you may have wondered what happened to the Knowles & Company packing house. And no, it did not succumb to a fire. When it closed, the huge old pine beams were taken down and sawed into smaller lumber. They made Joe Knowles guarantee the saw blade before they would cut the wood. The old growth pine wood was much harder than wood grown today. Those huge old pine beams gained new life as marvelous new old growth pine lumber. The citrus industry has changed through the years, but still has an important place in our economy. I'm grateful that our children, grandchildren, and future generations will have the opportunity to learn the history and remember the importance of the citrus industry. Thanks again to all that helped to keep this history alive. Thank you.
I'd like to begin by thanking the same people, because I don't have a good list like you had. The same exact, no, that's okay. You heard Mary, the same exact people. And when I first heard about this project, actually I think it was from Linda Tucker, who had been talking to John. Okay, from Colin Cruz. So the word of mouth was there, and I just thought it was the coolest idea ever. We had been collecting citrus labels in the family for years and years. My father had, of course, the E.B. Peter labels like you see here, and a number of other labels that were very, very interesting and very telling of the citrus industry in Florida. And so again, I'm Emmett B. Peter III. I'm the third guy in the namesake Emmett Peter Citrus Groves, and I actually moved away, in the early '80s, late '70s, and lived in Orlando for quite a few years, 30 years. But my long-term intent was always to come back to Leesburg, and more specifically to live at Sunnyside, where all our citrus groves had begun, and there's still the bungalow where my grandfather where my father was born and my grandfather lived for a few years. The bungalow is still standing, and it's just great to be in that area. I have a lot of the same stories that Mary has about growing up in the citrus groves, and she didn't mention orange fights, but in our high school years, it was pretty frequent that people would go out and have fights with the oranges. I'm sure the growers didn't like it too much, but we have the same memories about the orange blossoms and all the amenities that go with these large groves of citrus and where you live. And so it was just a great time. As you'll see when you get into the history of the E.B. Peter label, my grandfather started at age 18, and that's an amazing for someone to decide to start a business at age 18 and go into the business of selling citrus and shipping it. And so at 18 he began E.B. Peter Citrus Groves, and he eventually had a packing house which was on 6th Street near the ice plant, I believe it was, and there's no remnants of it. I'm not sure what happened to it. Mary has a better idea of what happened to their packing house, but I don't really know. Maybe someone can fill in the blanks. But in any event, as the generations grew along, my father was not near as passionate about citrus. He was a journalist, as many of you might know, for the Leesburg Daily Commercial and other newspapers. His passion was journalism and writing, and so and then my passion was engineering. I was an engineer at Disney World for 30 years or so. So the citrus groves persisted until the mid-'80s. The citrus groves persisted until the mid-'80s when the freeze, the dual freezes in the '85 mid-'80s time frame, pretty well put an end to our groves and many others in the area. But the fun memories I have is a story that my sisters only recently told me, that in the citrus industry, the growers had this phenomenon called the lower limb blight, which is if you have a citrus tree by the road, the lower limbs tend to have less citrus on them as you approach the picking season. And that's obviously because people in cars come up and grab some fruit and they just take it. So one day my father was in the groves and somebody stopped and started loading up some bags of citrus, and he just kind of came from the background and started helping them pick the oranges, and he just struck up a conversation with them, helped them pick a bushel or so, and at the very end he said, okay, that'll be $3 or whatever it was at the time. So he ended up charging him for the citrus after helping him pick it. So, but there's lots of stories. I hope you'll have a look at the QR codes and get deeper into the history, and hopefully you'll learn a lot more, as I have by working with John, and he kind of put me on a forced march to uncover a lot of the history of E.B. Peter Groves, and it was a great experience, and I thank you for that. One more note is our sign is dedicated to John Henry and Rosalie Moore. John Henry was our grove foreman, and his work spanned all 3 generations of us. And he was really the glue that kept Peter Citrus Groves together. We were a small grower, of course, and his his talents were just immeasurable. He could graft the sweet buds onto a sour rootstock. Of course, you had to use sour rootstock for a citrus tree because it was hardy enough to survive, winds and rains and all sorts of environmental issues. So all the fruit trees were sour rootstock, but they had a bud, and the sweet fruit grew from that. And he was expert at budding that citrus and maintaining things. He was a good shot with a .22 varmint rifle. He was just amazing. They were an amazing family, and I just wanted to honor them with our sign and to keep their memory alive. So.
Everyone, we appreciate you coming out today. My name is Brenda Eubanks Burnett. I'm the Executive Director of the Florida Citrus Hall of Fame, and we started this program in Polk County. And I want to tell you how it came about because I thought it was such an interesting story, and so many people have asked me about it. The director of the Davenport Historical Society had been in North Carolina, and she had seen what's called the quilt trail up there. And you drive throughout Carolina, you'll see all these different patches of quilt patterns. And she came back to Florida, and she knew of our interest in the citrus crate labels. She ran the Davenport Historical Society. And she said, Brenda, we would really love to do something like that with citrus labels. Do you think it'd be a good idea? I said, oh my gosh, I think it's brilliant. And yes, we are all on board. We will definitely help you. The Polk County Historical Museum, Murtis Young, she and Harriet put the whole group together. And I just helped supply some of the information and the labels, the images, worked with some of the citrus people there to get that going. And that was probably around 5 years ago that we started. Now we have over 55 different labels on over, I think, 17 or 18 different cities. It's every municipality in Polk County. We started there because the Florida Citrus Hall of Fame started there in 1962, and next year will mark our 60th anniversary for the Florida Citrus Hall of Fame. Originally, we were dedicated to honoring the contributions of distinguished men and women in the citrus industry to the benefit of the citrus industry. When we moved to Florida Southern College in 2008, our mission expanded because we created 5 different endowments, fellowship endowments for fellowship students to help us preserve, document, and digitize different images, papers, everything in terms of the citrus industry, so we could help preserve that heritage because, as you know, the industry has been shrinking. In the 1980s, we were producing over 280 million boxes of oranges, and today we're down to under 60 million boxes of oranges. So you can see that kind of contraction that has occurred in such a short time. So to that end, we have really worked hard to put together a website that people could use for both research and just enjoyment purposes. That tells a little bit about the history of the industry. And the labels were my passion. I've written 2 books on the labels with Jerry Chicone, who's out of, well, now he's in Orlando. And these were just something that was very near and dear to my heart because I've always called them Florida's first billboards. They are a significant snapshot of an era that was the golden era of the citrus industry. And John Jackson and I became acquainted in 1988-89 when I started at the Florida Citrus Hall of Fame. And we've known each other ever since then. He was the historian for the Florida Citrus Hall of Fame at that time. And now he just now retired several years ago as the president. So we go way back, and when this thing started, he said, Brenda, I think that's a great idea. Let's see what we can do with it. And we created the Polk County as the flagship program to be able to go out to other counties, expand it throughout Florida. And we are now in Manatee County, Indian River County, and Lake County marks our 4th location. With that being said, John has spearheaded just a phenomenal job of bringing this program together. He's seen my comments and his comments together. It's like, you know what, we really want more history about the labels so people can get to them easily. This is a driving tour. If people want to bring out their phones and shoot the QR code and get the history, that would be so cool. I said, John, that'd be great, do it. And he did it. And these signs are, I mean, Joe with the custom graphics place, he has done just a yeoman's work on making these beautiful and something that when people go by, they're going to stop, turn around, stop, look, come out and see it. Shoot that QR code and get that piece of history that's affiliated with each label. And John has done the work on getting all the families involved and getting that history. And it's hard work because at one time we had over 5,000 labels in the industry. We only know about 4,000 today, and I know there's probably more than that, a lot more than 5,000 out there that we never knew about. People like Colin Cruz, John Veldhouse, Jerry Chicone, Jim Ellis, Ann Dickinson. There's a number of people who are the core of the people who collected these images and have made them available to us. The Florida Citrus Hall of Fame has about 1,500 images in their database collection. Jerry Chicone's collection is on the University of Florida website. You can get it there. I think he has over 2,000. Colin has a number of labels that he's going to be putting out there so that we can fill in the gaps of what we don't have. And again, it's rectifying and saving and preserving the heritage of this unique industry before it's lost to us forever. So we appreciate your part in being here today, and anything that you have that in your attics or your scrapbooks, get with John and let him preserve that for you. Don't let it get to the next generation where they don't know anything about it and say, yeah, let's just, they get rid of it and throw it in the garbage. So, and that goes for records of your packing house, your company records. Let the archivists in the libraries or at the Florida Citrus Hall of Fame or the historical societies, let them make that determination, because those little snapshots of what those prices were at that time, that's very significant to know what the economic factors were during those particular time frames. So again, I'm so very, very excited about this program. You have 12 different locations in 9 different cities with 24 labels, and we're hoping to expand that again throughout Lake County. I've already been approached by 3 or 4 people who want to go forward with this program. So John thinks he's done with the program, but he's looking for somebody to hand it off to, I know. But with that said, I'm going to turn it over to John, who has done such a phenomenal job in getting this program here in Lake County. Thank you.
Well, this has been an exciting journey for me, as I learned a lot about families, learned about stories that are absolutely fascinating. And so now it's your turn to help us out. For example, Florida's Natural, a grower cooperative in Lake Wales, the only Florida-owned processing plant. The juice is 100% Florida juice. If I catch any of you at the grocery store buying any of those other brands besides Florida Natural, your picture will be posted with a big no, no, no in front of it. So Florida's Natural with the juice. We already mentioned Joe LeBlanc, the sign guy. He's a craftsman, a master. His son, who helps him, said, I guarantee you every QR code goes to the website. If you don't have a card that has a website on there, get a handful, pass them out, because here's where we're going next. These signs are simply a portal into stories about Joshua. And if you remember the Peter family, you know who Joshua is. And if you don't know who Joshua is or what Joshua is, go to the website and you'll find out. You'll find out about frog log in their camp, and there's all kind of stories. And out here among you, there are people that like to hide in the background, like Ed James back here. Ed can tell you story after story if you get him down and get him going. He worked in packing houses from the time he could tie his shoes, doesn't even have shoelaces now, and he's still out there working in the citrus business. Jimbo Mayfield back here, his family was in the citrus business, and so for me it's exciting to tell the stories, and for you to participate. Visit this, give us some feedback, provide stories. Without the Knowles story, unbelievable. I found it remarkable how many families don't have that kind of information. And when you have to go to an obituary to learn all you can about a family, you feel sorry, and your children and grandchildren will appreciate what's done. If you have artifacts of any nature that you don't know what to do with, like Mr. Steinmeter here has been hiding this magnificent crate for a number of years. It needs to be shared. That one back there, my son discovered, and the label on there, Princess, Colin doesn't have it in his collection, Chacon doesn't have it, Jim Ellis doesn't have it. So those people who take pictures and do wonderful things with Photoshop, we now have recreated that label. So there are documents out there, don't throw them away. Let us have a chance to see if we can use them and preserve them and save them. So thank you all for participating. Every one of these signs, all 24 of the signs that we have, were sponsored by the citrus industry, growers and organizations. We didn't go begging money from banks, from cities, from counties. This is all citrus industry money. Why? Because they want to tell their story to all those people here who have no earthly idea that in Lake County we had 11 million citrus trees that produced 13 billion pieces of fruit that were harvested by hand, packed, squeezed, and so forth. A story that y'all should be proud to share and tell. I'm glad I'm having a little part of it. I want to share one last comment with you. Many of you probably know Dr. Rufus Dick Holloway. His family was in Leesburg, and Dick went to med school and was a very prominent doctor that lives in Orlando now. And I got a hold of him through Glenn Tyre, and I said, we'd like to come interview you. We do oral histories through the Hall of Fame. Ed James is one of our famous interviewees. So I asked Dick Holloway, I said, would you mind talking to us and sharing a little bit about what citrus was like in Leesburg? And Dr. Holloway said, let me tell you this. I grew up in Leesburg as a child, and I can tell you one thing, is heaven is half as nice as it was when I was growing up in Leesburg as a child. I'm really looking forward to being there. So I think that pretty well summarizes the feeling that people had that grew up in the industry. So with that, it's time for us to unveil the crate label.
Hey, I'm here today with John Jackson. We're going to talk a little bit about the Citrus Label Tour. So we just dedicated a really awesome sign here in downtown Leesburg in Town Square. And so tell me a little bit about the sign and Lake County's history when it comes to the citrus industry.
Well, for many, many years, crate labels were used to stick on the end of fruit cartons that were being shipped north. And growers and packers had to identify, separate their crop from somebody else's, and so they had many, many labels. Each different packer would have 2 or 3 labels. And over time, we shifted to cardboard containers, and labels kind of disappeared. And then they resurfaced as collector's items because of the magnificent artwork that was on there. And so now they've become advertising the citrus industry from their art value rather than from their marketing strategy. So in Lake County, we wanted to tell the story of the citrus industry, and we said, man, why not use crate labels? And quite truthfully, they were doing that in Polk County, so we copied them. But we weren't content just to have a label here. So on the label is a code that takes you to a website that has history of all the labels. It has stories about individuals who are involved in the industry, members in the Hall of Fame, growers, and just great stories. We have oral history interviews with people, and we're going to continue to do that to tell the story of Lake County citrus. And we're so happy that Leesburg is one of the 12 locations that we have a sign. And what's so phenomenal about these 2 signs is the families were characteristic of many families around Lake County that were the economic cornerstone and foundation. They had packing facilities and looked after grows, provided jobs, they fired the economy, supported everything. And Mr. Peter, for example, goes back to the 1880s with his grows. The Knowles family's been here since the 30s. And we just are so pleased to tell their story and let people know that for 125 years, citrus was Lake County, and Leesburg was one of the prominent cities and packing growing areas in Lake County.
So I'm here with Mary Knowles, and we're here at the Citrus Label dedication here in downtown Leesburg, and her family was one of the families that sponsored and had a packing house here in Leesburg. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your family history, and why you got involved?
Well, my grandfather and my grandmother came down from North Dakota after the Depression hit them so heavily financially, and they came for a new start, warmer climate. To quote my grandmother, because I'd never got a chance to meet my grandfather, but she said he would always say, "Mary, we may starve to death in Florida, but we won't freeze to death in North Dakota." So they came down here. They started the packing house, the Knowles and Company Packing House. Unfortunately, I didn't get to meet him because he died the month before I was born, but he left it very clear that he wanted the company to continue. And so my uncles, or my Uncle Tim, who was the oldest, and my dad were the ones that ran the packing house and the citrus company. My Uncle Hal was a medical doctor. So for years they ran the Knowles and Company packing house. They employed part-time people. They had summer jobs, migrant workers, and then as well as many people that worked there for most, if not all, of their lives. So they had a big impact on the Lake County citrus business.
Well, I will say, as a resident of Leesburg, we are very proud to host the Citrus Label Tour here, and I'm super excited and stoked that it's your family that's the first one. So thank you.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you sharing the history.
Hey, so Brenda's here with me. She is the executive director at the Florida Citrus Hall of Fame and one of the partners of the Citrus Label Tour. We're very excited to have her here. So tell us a little bit about why the tour and why here in Leesburg.
Well, first of all, Lake County is our fourth location. Florida Citrus Hall of Fame started this program with community partners in Polk County as a flagship space because that's where we're based. And the idea came about because one of the ladies at the Davenport Historical Society, Harriet Rust, had been in North Carolina and seen the quilt trails up there. And she said, wouldn't that be a nice idea if we did that with citrus labels? And so she and Murtis Young, who's head of the Polk County Historical Center, came to me and said, could you partner with us on doing this? So we partnered with them along with the Visit Central Florida group and put together at this point over 55 labels in every single municipality throughout Polk County. And then we reached out and went outside of Polk County to other counties. We're in Manatee, Indian River, and Lake County is our fourth installation. And actually it's a very highlight because they've done it to the point where we have all of the information on the background of the labels that are presented. So you can drive up in your car, and if you don't want to get out, you don't have to, but if you want to get out and do the QR code, it'll take you right to the information on that particular label that you're looking at. But we wanted to be able to preserve the history of the citrus industry because it's a rapidly shrinking industry. We've been beset by greening, and at one point in the 1980s we were shipping over or producing over 280 million boxes of oranges, and now we're down to under 60 million. And at one time Lake County was the epicenter of the citrus industry, so it's a very great place to have this tour come into play, and there's so many more labels that we could utilize and have it expand throughout this county as well to create something like Polk County has done. And the signs are just phenomenal. The ironwork that he's done with the wrought iron vines and everything is very unique to this area. And again, the labels, they started in the early 1900s and were used to ship the citrus up north in the crates. And I've always called them Florida's first billboards. It just has captured kind of the golden era of the citrus industry.
I love that. Billboards, the Florida's first billboards. That's fantastic. It's a great way of saying that because at the end of the day, our society loves branding.
Yes.
And graphic design gets put into it, artwork. And so this is a really great example of early versions of branding, specifically when it came into the agricultural industry.
Yes, at one point, I mean, a lot of the artists who did this work were actually well-known artists, but they didn't sign their names because commercial work wasn't what they wanted to do. So it's kind of unique, and the artwork is very whimsical. Some of it is very family-oriented in terms of, like, you might have a family member on it or a family pet. It showcases some of the area, like the Flatwoods with Piney Bell, the lakes, all types of images that are Florida-related. So it really speaks out to the northern visitor visiting the sunny South.
So thanks, Pam, for being here today and witnessing this awesome sign dedication for the Citrus Label Tour here in Leesburg.
Thank you, Maria. It's my pleasure. I'm the Community Relations Representative for Congressman Daniel Webster, and it is a pleasure to be here. I was in Tavares yesterday with the sign dedications, and I'm here again in Leesburg at the City Hall here on the corner and the Citrus Label Tour. This is amazing because we can treat this as a byway where people can revisit the history of Florida through citrus. And these labels are actual crate labels that were recreated. So the Congressman is excited about this. There are 12 locations that we're excited about visiting. And I think this is so important to keep our history alive, to tell our children that citrus was and is still one of the most important agricultural industries in Florida.
It's wonderful. And it's safe to say that this is a really good way of showcasing our ag through tourism as part of Lake County's agenda for ag tourism.
Absolutely. And I want to invite everyone outside of Lake County and especially in Lake County to bring your children, teach them, and revisit these crate labels.
So what a great morning for the sign dedication for the crate label tour. This is an amazing opportunity to really learn about Leesburg's history, specifically in the citrus industry. I encourage everyone to come out, spend an afternoon in downtown Leesburg, and stop by 5th and Main and check out this amazing sign behind me. And they got 12 spots all around Lake County. You can get out of your car if you want and check out, take your phone and take a picture of the QR code, and it'll take you straight to the website and guide you to where all of the citrus label signs are on display, and history of the family and the packing houses and groves. For more information, you can visit their website. It is historyoflakecountycitrus.com. All right, thank you, and I hope you guys can come down and check it out.